Let's take you back to our breaking story. The ANC and KZN, of course, naming Nomusa Dube Ncube as its candidate for premier to become the provincial premier. This after Sihle Zikalala, of course, resigned last week. Let's get some reaction now from political analyst Lukhona Mnguni. He joins us now live. Any surprises there? I'm sure it's not a surprise that she's been chosen as the premier candidate.
Well, not at all, Maseko. Unsurprising. It became very clear when the shortlisted names were submitted to the national leadership that the stage was really set for Nomusa Dube Ncube to become the next premier of KwaZulu-Natal under the ANC government. And it's something that I know many in her circles have, motivated her towards. And at some point, I think 2019, there were efforts to submit her name, but all sort of things happened. As you would know, in the recent provincial conference, she accepted nomination from the floor but did not meet the threshold for the position of chairperson, which was seen as, again, her availing herself to lead the provincial government in future. So definitely not surprising, something that has been in the works. And of course, whether it will just be for now to caretaker from now to 2024 or to lead beyond 2024 stands to be seen.
And of course, this goes back to the ANC's own policies as a party about that threshold of leadership provincially, nationally, regionally, etc., of female representation. So I'm sure KZN will be very proud that it's been able to do that, even if it might just be for the next 2 years.
Well, certainly, no doubt. And I think it's also an important effort from the new provincial leadership of the ANC to start, extending the olive branch to different constituencies that may not have supported them, such as the Women's League in the province. That was quite clear that the time is ripe for a female chairperson in the ANC. Well, that has not happened, but at least she now becomes the first provincial premier to ever be, if she's elected, which I don't see won't happen. She'll be the first female premier of the province since 1994. And this really will bode well for those who supported her. And as part of consolidating the province of KwaZulu-Natal, I think towards a common position in terms of things that they will champion going towards the December 2022 National Conference of the ANC, they begin to start breaking the barriers and the walls amongst various groups. What will also be indicative is what kind of provincial cabinet reshuffle will then come, because as you know, she's the MEC for Treasury, and there are already a number of rumors doing the rounds in terms of certain people perhaps being recalled from being in the executive committee of the provincial government and others coming there. It will all really start signaling how the political reconfiguration is happening in the province.
And actually, I just wanted to ask you about that. I mean, especially, looking at the provincial elective conference, it wasn't a surprise, really, when Zikalala resigned last week, because clearly the ANC and KZN is rejecting him. He didn't even make it to the PEC. But also there's some of, the members of his cabinet, for instance, the MEC for Education, Yogwazi Mshengu, for instance, whose jobs might be on the line because he seemed to be a Zikalala supporter.
Well, certainly there might be that. There are also, conversations that a person like Ravi Pillay, who has been an MEC in the provincial government for the longest time, it might be time for him to hang his governance boots. But you'll also remember, Maseko, that Zikalala himself, in his sit-down with our colleagues, Pamandla Goge, he indicated that he will go where the ANC requires of him, including remaining in the provincial government as an MEC. But what he's certainly not going to do is to avail himself as a premier of the province. And I think he was making his own political considerations so that he's not micromanaged. As you are saying, he was not in the provincial executive committee, and this may necessitate that he be micromanaged. Yogwazi Mshengu made it to the PEC, Joe Mosbia made it to the PEC. So it will be interesting what kind of trade-offs politically the new leadership, at least the top five, really, because they will probably set the pace, the priorities that they are championing. Because if you remove colleagues that you serve in a provincial executive committee with so early into the game. It might just signal division and fracture from the get-go. Will that make it smooth sailing for them for the next 3 years of their leadership in the province and so on? So they have serious political considerations to make. Some people have been saying, look, political differences aside, Kwazi Mshengu and Jomosbia seem to be very hands-on in their departments. They are delivering to an extent, but we know that at the end of the day, the call around these positions is always to harmonize political dynamics within the province or at a national level.
And just lastly, Lukhona, the meaning of Dube Ncube's appointment as premier, that having any effect on the national conference taking place in December. Of course, we know that ANC was quite bruised in 2017. ANC and KZN, that is, quite bruised in 2017 after having, for the first time, no representation in the top 6 of its national structure. So, the work then, I assume that we'll be seeing KZN quite at work in the next 5 months leading up to December to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
No, absolutely. And they are going to probably be sifting out a few names, some suggestions. There's a press release that has just come out that the top 5 officials in the province of KwaZulu-Natal will be visiting former President Thabo Mbeki this afternoon around 4 p.m. And I think that's really part and parcel of them trying to reach out to certain, leaders, test out some of their thinking going towards the December conference. And see what it means. And it might just be interesting, Maseko, that Nomusa Dube Ncube is given this position of premier as caretaker until 2024 to make sure that she's not part of the names that have to be considered for those top 6 positions. So there's going to be a lot of horse trading and jostling. There are people like Dumiseni Ntuli, who lost out to Bheki Mtolo as provincial secretary. But there are certain people in the ANC who have a serious appetite for him to become the next, Secretary General of the ANC nationally. It will be those kinds of trade-offs. You will know that a region like Moses Mabhida in KwaZulu-Natal came out after its regional conference and said, though they support President Ramaphosa for a second term, they are very clear that Dr. Zweli Mkhize must be in the top 6 of the ANC come December 2022. And KZN itself will have to get its room into order. They will have to agree on the 2 names that they want to champion into the top 6. And my reading and my conversation with some of them at the policy conference in Nasrec 2 weeks ago was that they are not keen necessarily on a slate, but very keen on names to champion. And then if those names find resonance with others, that will be great. It seems as if people are becoming a little cautious of the slate's approach, given how toxic and how divisive it just necessarily becomes within the organization.
And quite interesting with Dumiseni Ntuli, I think he was probably collateral damage to being part of the executive during Sihle Zikalala's time. But thank you very much for speaking to us, Lukhona Mnguni, political analyst. And I wonder what it's going to say to South Africans when at a national level somebody accused of corruption, that is of course Dr. Zweli Mkhize, makes it to top 5. I wonder what's going to say to South Africans when it comes to 2024. Let's